Hello, my name is Professor Stephen Baar, and welcome to our expert interview series discussing a multidisciplinary approach to athlete monitoring. Today, we jump into the world of strength and conditioning in basketball, focusing on insights gained from the NBA and the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm excited to chat with Ernest DeLosAngeles, Director of Performance in the NBA G League with Team Ignite. We have much to discuss, from monitoring the effects of travel, how to monitor injury status and tendon health, monitoring training load and different strategies for preparing starters versus non-starters, and ultimately preparing players during COVID. It's fantastic to have you to talk us through and navigate everything around approaches to monitoring athlete training, load, health, and performance.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to sharing my insights and experiences with you all.
Ernie, recently we had an opportunity to collaborate on a publication preparing basketball players for competition during COVID-19 lockdown. Your section focused on the NBA G League, but before you walk us through some of the key lessons you've learned from navigating through uncertainties of the pandemic, can you provide us with a brief overview of the NBA G League and the Ignite program?
The NBA G League is a minor league to the NBA. Majority of players in the NBA have spent some time in the G League because it is a farm system to the NBA. The Ignite program itself is a one-of-a-kind program created to give players an alternative as they come out of high school instead of going into college and for the year where they're preparing for the draft. Our program aims to develop these guys for the year, allow them to play professionals and to learn how to be a professional, surrounded by coaches that have experience in the NBA and also veterans who have experience in the NBA or playing overseas. The goal is just to surround them with a more professional environment than college offers.
I've heard this term, athletes going to college for 1 year and then nominating for the draft. Is that how that term come about?
That's exactly how the term came about. So these players that come through the Ignite program, it's essentially guys who think that they're going to only spend 1 year in college. So instead of spending 1 year in college, they'll spend that 1 year with us in the NBA G League and prepare for the draft. Another thing that's unique about this program is now players have the opportunity to spend another year or multiple years with our program. In our first few years of existence, we only had guys come in for a year and then they would enter the draft. Now, if you don't like your draft status, if you feel like you can improve your draft status, you can stick around for an additional year, similar to the likes of college.
The professional league in Australia, the National Basketball League, had something to do with this early on because a prominent player from the States chose to come and play in Australia for a year, of course being LaMelo Ball, who signed with the Illawarra Hawks. And also RJ Hampton came at the same time and played for New Zealand. And I know that you've actually taken players that have done their time in the NBL and then transitioned across. Your involvement in their transition, what does that look like?
We definitely have some players that have come through the program that have done a remarkable job and are now doing a remarkable job in NBA and are really figureheads of what the goal of the program is. We've had guys like Jalen Green, and they've come through and learned how to be a professional in that 1 year, in their one and done year. They learned how to take care of their bodies, how to do the things necessary to help them stay on the court, because they just didn't have that experience coming straight out of high school like most high school students. This is the goal of the program, to be able to equip them with everything necessary for them to succeed in the NBA, which we're seeing some guys take these experiences with Ignite and run with it.
That's what the program is about, right? Fostering emerging talent and giving them the skills to be able to transition to the next level. I guess that's a really nice segue then into the multidisciplinary approach to health and performance. There's several parts to that. One I want to touch on is what occurred through COVID, and that gave us the opportunity to collaborate and publish a paper. I really want to delve now into some of the key lessons that you learned in navigating through that uncertainty of the pandemic and COVID, especially when you're still trying to prepare athletes to be able to perform at the highest level, knowing that their draft stock is really important. So how did you go about preparing these players during COVID, and what were some of the key lessons that you learned through that period?
COVID was such an interesting time for everyone. And I think the unknown was the biggest challenge for us because we didn't know when our competition season was going to begin. So the goal for our staff was, how do we keep these players engaged? How do we maintain their competitiveness? And how do we continue to prepare them for when the season does begin? So those unknowns were the biggest obstacles that we had and the things that we were challenged with. During COVID, I think the thing for us was we want to make sure that we're still providing them with the professional development, which included a lot of education for these guys. And education, not just on the court, but off the court as well. So how can we teach them how to be a professional and handle themselves off the court, whether it's in the business matters or whether it's in their personal life, whether it's in their nutrition and their training, which is where I came in and played a role. And then also maintaining competitiveness. How do we keep them engaged enough to want to show up day in and day out when you don't really know when you're going to play your next game?
Going back a few years now with the NFL when they had the lockout, and then back into the environment, probably not fully prepared when you're talking about sprint work and strength training and plyometrics,
Exactly.
Change direction and injury risk mitigation. There's a lot of research on that particular period where there was a spike in tendon injuries, predominantly Achilles tendon. Looking back at the program, how did you approach risk mitigation for injury, knowing that you're trying to train players to be ready to play, but unsure as to when that's actually going to occur?
That's a great point. And those are the exact things that I tried to make sure that I was incorporating in these training programs, making sure that we're prescribing high speed running, progressing plyometric exercises, and that they were getting doses of that throughout this time. And also making sure they were getting the strength training that they needed, but not really knowing when are we going to peak, when are we going to taper, because we didn't know when the competitive season was going to begin. From that standpoint, we did take a more undulating periodization approach. The tendons themselves, that was a big target for us. We followed Dr. Keith Baar's research, which suggested collagen supplementation prior to training with tendon targeted isometric exercises. So that was something that we focused on to not only help collagen synthesis, but to also mitigate pain or alleviate pain.
A really fascinating look at some of the approaches around the injury prevention and priorities around tendon health. You're completing your PhD, tendon symptomology. How did it end up that tendon health was where you're now studying and completing a PhD?
For me, I saw how prevalent tendinopathies in general was in the basketball community, being so prevalent and having to deal with it on a regular basis, season after season. I just felt like this was an area that I had a lot of interest in, because this would be one of the main things that I've seen keep guys from being able to perform at their very best. Having some very explosive athletes come through our program who were hindered by these, I guess that amplified my interest. So that's where I started to really dive down that rabbit hole.
Impressive how you're trying to integrate an evidence-based approach and enhance players' health and well-being, and a focus on tendon symptomology, role of nutrition in this process for collagen synthesis and tendon health. What is it around nutritional strategies that you're using, and how critical is that as part of this process?
I think the biggest things that we are doing as far as nutrition, first and foremost, educating our players on the importance of nutrition. The majority of our players coming out of high school, and even for our veterans that join our team, it's educating them on why a well-balanced diet is important and how it aids in recovery and how it can help them in their performance. One of the biggest things that we like to do is take a blood panel, biomarker testing. What are the things that they're lacking? What are the things that they're in need of from a nutrient standpoint? And a lot of the times that what we're seeing is the vitamin D levels are very low. So that's one of the first areas that we target. Again, going back to the tendons and collagen synthesis, we supplement with the collagen on a regular basis. That's another one from the nutrition standpoint. From there, it's more individualized on what the guys may need. Some of our guys may need magnesium or vitamin B or fish oil. It's just very dependent on the guy's diet and what their biomarkers tell us.
Around this multidisciplinary approach, you've mentioned the nutrition department being involved, endocrinology from the blood panel work. You're collaborating with several practitioners within your group. One of the things for the students specifically is around communication amongst your medical and performance team. How do you go around communication when you have chosen to look at blood panel work, then making that part of your process overall?
For me, the biggest thing with the communication, especially if I want to introduce anything new to our team, is stressing the importance of how it can benefit our players and how we would utilize it. Because if it's not important, taking action from it, then for us, the juice may not be worth the squeeze. So stressing to the staff why it's important and how we're going to take action, and also getting their feedback as well. I like to have the other staff members' input and feedback on the things that they feel are important. So making sure that it's more of a collaboration for everybody involved. I think those are the biggest things that we like to do as a team.
We see that across all levels of high-performing environments, whether that's industry, whether it's sport. The communication piece is critical, and clarity on role and clarity on task. It's evident that your team's approach is a holistic approach to player health and well-being and performance. And especially during challenging times, one of the key factors in having the privilege of working in elite sport is you have this team, but they're all a team of individuals. So understanding the nuances of each individual. For you now, Ernie, in your role over the next 12 months, what do you hope to accomplish within your health and performance team?
The most immediate thing I would like to accomplish is being able to send off the players that we have within our group to a good start into their NBA team. The draft is coming up in June this year. And so seeing them get drafted and move on to their NBA teams, that's one of the things that I would like to accomplish along with my colleagues. This is what our efforts are for. This is what the collaboration is for in preparing these guys. Some teams, it's to win a championship. For us, that is our championship. So even though we like to win and we don't like to lose, at the end of the day, if we're not preparing these guys to succeed and we're not giving them the tools necessary, then that's the same as losing a championship. So seeing these guys off to a great start in the NBA and getting them drafted is priority number one. I think number two is continuing to revamp some of our processes. And I think at the end of the year, that's something that we've done, especially for myself. I like to do, what did we do well? What can I do better? So just reevaluating some of the things that we've done as a team or that I've done personally, and seeing how I can improve those areas, whether that's monitoring or implementing new practices, or maybe even taking away some of the practices that we have because they weren't as useful as we thought they would be. I think we can always find a million things to add, but the challenge is what's the most important? What's the things that are going to actually drive performance, drive health, and drive overall improvement in the players? So those are a couple of the things that I would like to see in the next 12 months.
When you talk about monitoring strategies for basketball players, what would be one or two of your go-to monitoring tools that you employ?
Specifically for basketball players or for a basketball team, I think the ones that I find most helpful driving health and performance, it would be first the force plates. We utilize force plates quite a bit, not only their readiness, but also looking at their performance. From a readiness standpoint, we're looking at modified RSI, just try and see how are the players adapting to the stresses. So force plates would be one of the main ones, I would say, for basketball athletes. The other one would be utilizing a load monitoring system. So whether you have heart rate monitors or GPS, we have LPS using Connexon. So utilizing that to monitor workload or what's going on court. I think there's other alternatives that you can utilize if you don't have access to that technology, such as time on feet. There's a lot of research monitoring time on feet. That's one that just to be able to examine for us, looking at the Connexon data, I'm able to have these conversations with coaches and players on who's doing what on court, not only in practices, but also in the games. Yeah. The metrics that's easiest to have conversations on are mileage and then also accumulated acceleration load. Our coach, he's able to understand that. And when I tell him this guy has covered 25 miles this week, it's been a pretty high week for him. He's able to break that down. And so figuring out ways that you can communicate that with your coaches or staff on the ways that are simple for them to understand, I think is key when utilizing these monitoring strategies. But those would be my two, I think, force plates and the Connexon or load monitoring system.
For sure, we talk about NBA, so it'll be remiss of us if we didn't talk about monitoring the effects of travel. Is there anything in relation to travel that you employ from a monitoring perspective?
We like to monitor how long for a particular road trip and just looking at the accumulation effects. We utilize a readiness questionnaire. It's pretty simple: sleep, stress, and their nutrition. So we use that from a monitoring perspective when traveling, just making sure that they have everything that they need from a nutrition standpoint. So we provide them with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so they don't have to worry about those things. They already know that when I get to a city, I know that'll be provided in the team room. That team room is kind of our hub where we'll utilize that to watch film, where they grab their practice gear, where we'll have the protein, the fruits, and their meals. That's kind of the hub for them where they can go and get the things that they need to help with the travel overall.
Are there any other strategies or tools that you think would be useful thinking about how do I implement a monitoring load process?
Session duration, the session frequency. There's a lot of research looking at match day, +1, -1, and how would you map those sessions out? So how can we make those recommendations to our coaches? There's been a lot of research on having a framework where it's a high, low, medium day as far as what that training intensity will look like. Looking at the training volume, which is the duration. So those will be some of the areas I would take into consideration, and then looking at what's the difference between our starters and our non-starters within the team, and what's the workload that the starters are performing in a game compared to our non-starters, and then how can we help our non-starters be prepared to handle those types of workload if thrust into those situations. For us personally as a team, we call those groups if you're not a starter and you're not cracking the rotation, like that's our stay ready group. Mm-hmm. And so it's just making sure that regardless of when your time's called, that you just stay ready. And so having those thoughts in mind when creating your load monitoring system.
I like that. Stay ready to be ready.
That's it.
Thank you so much for your time. I know there's differences with you being in the States and us being over here. What you've been able to share for our students is valuable insights into your everyday world, what you do on a day-to-day basis within your organization. It's been enlightening to hear about the strategies that you employ with Team Ignite. That concludes our expert interview for today with Ernest DeLosAngeles, the Director of Performance at Team Ignite in the NBA G League. Join us next time when we continue to explore this dynamic field in elite sports, athlete health and performance. Until then, remember, an athlete's best ability is availability. Keeping your athletes strong, resilient, and healthy are our goals. Until next time, bye for now.